NHL regular season recap, night 160, 12 games on the night. We're jumping straight into arguably the most important one, the Washington Capitals taking on the Detroit Red Wings with a game with massive playoff implications. We get no goals in the first, both goalies pretty solid, stopping 7 shots apiece. And in the second, the offense kind of fires up. Nick Dowd scoring 2 minutes in, and then Alex DeBrincat and David Perron both scoring in the latter parts of the period to make it 2-1 Red Wings after 2. They outshoot Washington 20-12 in that period, but in the third, Connor McMichael and Dylan Strome both scoring within the first 5 minutes of the frame to to give the Capitals the lead. But with just about 5 minutes to go, Patty Kane with a wide-open one-time blast in the slot ties us back up at 3. We head to overtime, and Dylan Strome, once again, his second goal of the game, ends up being the hero here. Both goalies with about average NHL goaltending. Alex Lyon, 26 of 30. Charlie Lindgren, 30 of 33. Both these guys had some really big saves at certain moments. Charlie Lindgren good enough to get the 2 points here, though, and a massive game for Washington over the Red Wings. The Bruins taking on the Panthers in a matchup between the top 2 teams in the Atlantic Division and 2 of the top teams in the entire NHL. The Panthers get off to an early start here. Evan Rodriguez, less than 30 seconds in, makes it 1-0. We get no goals for most of the remainder of the first, but Charlie McAvoy, with less than 3 minutes to go, makes it a 1-1 game. And before the period can wrap up, Sam Reinhart scores his 51st of the year to regain the lead for Florida. In the second period, David Pastrnak, the lone goal scorer, to tie us back up. In the third, we get about halfway through before Verhaeghe makes it a 3-2 game, and then 5 minutes later, Trent Frederick makes it a 3-3 game, and Pavel Zacha, a couple minutes after that, scores the fourth and final goal here for the Bruins. It's a 4-3 win in regulation, which is big here. Both goalies facing 21 shots, neither great statistically. Swayman slightly better, 18 of 21 for an .857. Bobrovsky, 17 of 21 for an .810, and the Bruins here just good enough to get the 2 points. And again, majorly important that it's in regulation, so no points here for the Panthers. 4-3 is the final. The Rangers hosting the Flyers in another really big game here, largely for Philadelphia, but for the Rangers too. They can be one of the first teams to clinch a playoff spot in the NHL. No goals in the first, but in the second and third, the offense opens up completely. Scott Laughton and Ryan Poehling scoring the first 2 goals here. Mika Zibanejad would score as well in the second to make it a 2-1 game, headed to the third, and then in the third, things really open up. Brodzinski and Lafreniere both score early on to make it a 3-2 game for New York. Konechny scores a few minutes later to tie it up at 3. Trocheck scores at the 9.5-minute mark to make it 4-3. Tippett scores to make it 5-4, or 4-4. And then Lafreniere and Forrester both scoring, and it's a 6-5 final for the Rangers. Fox scores an OT to make it 6-5, just 30 seconds in. An extremely back-and-forth game. Fox striking on the only shot in overtime. Of course, neither goalie all that great in this one either. Sam Ersson especially not very good. 21 of 27 for a .778. Shesterkin was definitely the busier of the two. He faced 41, gives up 5, so it's an .878 for him. Good enough for the 2 points here. Philly does secure the 1 point, so they stay just slightly ahead of Washington for the time being, but the Caps getting 2 points definitely makes this race all that much more interesting. 6-5 in overtime is the final here for the Rangers. The Penguins taking on the Carolina Hurricanes, and as much as everyone was talking about this being a return to Pittsburgh for Jay Gensel, it's also a re-return for Alex Nedeljkovic to Carolina, and he was the star tonight. No goals in the first period. Puljujarvi, Orlov, and Russ in the second, and then Drew O'Connor and Sidney Crosby both with empty netters in the third. It's a 2-1 on the goalies, 4-1 in total here for the Penguins. Kochetkov, 18 of 20 for a .900. Nowhere near as busy as the aforementioned Alex Nedeljkovic, who goes 38 for 39 for a .974 and the 2 points for Pittsburgh. A massive game out of him against his former team. Happens once in a while for goalies. It seems to be very hit or miss. They either play very well or not very well at all. He, of course, very, very strong tonight. Gets the Penguins the 2 points in a 4-1 victory over the Canes. The Leafs hosting the Devils in yet another pretty big game on the evening. The Leafs only 4 points ahead of Tampa Bay, and this is their game in hand. The Devils, of course, still fighting for their lives with regard to the playoffs, and it gets going early here for Toronto. Just a minute in, Tyler Bertuzzi makes it 1-0, but just a few minutes after that, Luke Hughes ties it up at 1, and Nico Hischier scores with 2 minutes left in the first to make it 2-1 Devils after 1. Early on in the second, though, it's Nylander and Matthews with their 40th and 59th of the year to regain the lead for Toronto. But less than a minute later, Timo Meier ties it back up once again, and then Max Willman in the latter half of the period makes it a 4-3 game for New Jersey. Headed to the third, where Jack Hughes takes over. He scores 2 in the final frame, 1 on Joseph Woll, 1 on the empty net, and it's a 6-3 victory for the Devils. Again, a huge one for them, trying to stay alive in this playoff race. For the goalies, Joseph Woll, not his best night, 19 of 24 for a .792. You need a couple more saves out of him if you guys want to win the games for the Leafs. Jake Allen, meanwhile, for New Jersey was phenomenal, 42 of 45 for a .933 save percentage. The first star in this game, in my opinion, of course. Nico Hischier, though, gets the first star credentials here with the goal and 2 assists. Jesper Bratt also 3 assists on the evening. So a strong night all around from a lot of Devils here, namely Jake Allen, and it's a big 2 points for them over the Leafs in a 6-3 fashion. The Oilers taking on the Jets in another very highly anticipated game tonight, and surprisingly, no goals in the first period, despite that being the highest quantity of shots in any of the 3 periods tonight. Mason Appleton cracks open the scoring in the second, 1-0 Jets, but Draisaitl and Connor Brown score about 2 minutes apart from one another in the latter half of the period to make it 2-1 Oilers in the third. Nugent Hopkins would score to make it 3-1 about 6 minutes in, but in the latter half of the period, once again, Brendan Dillon and Sean Monahan striking for Winnipeg to tie us up. We do head to OT in this one, and it's Zach Hyman who continues his dominance. His 51st goal of the year is the game winner here for Edmonton. Stuart Skinner, much less busy than Connor Hellebuck tonight. He faces just 25 shots, stops 22 of them for an .880, while Connor Hellebuck, the Vezina finalist for a reason, 38 of 42 for a .905, just not quite good enough here for the win, but a very good game by him all in all. This is a very exciting game, lived up to the expectations, would love to see this later in the playoffs, but if it is the case, Oilers win this round 4-3 in overtime. The Predators hosting the Golden Knights, looking to keep their point streak alive, and it didn't look very promising in the first period. Ivan Barbashev, Brett Howden, and Shea Theodore all scoring 3-0 Vegas after one. Mark Jankowski would score with about 5 minutes to go in the second to make it 3-1 in favor of Vegas still, but William Karlsson would score again to make it 4-1. Heads to the third, the game looks pretty much over at this point, but not so fast, say the Predators. Ryan O'Reilly, just under 6 minutes in, makes it a 4-2 game in the second half of the third. With about 8 minutes to go, Philip Forsberg scores his 40th of the year to make it a 4-3 game. And then less than a minute later, Gus Nyquist on the power play with his 20th of the year ties us up at 4. We head to OT in this one as well. And just 40 seconds in, it's the captain, Roman Josi, who completes the comeback for Nashville. It's a 5-4 overtime victory. Both goalies facing 35 shots tonight. UC Saros just marginally better than Yuri Patera, as should be the case, I guess. Patera 30 of 35 for an .857. Saros 31 of 35 for an .886. The Nashville point streak not only stays alive, but they get the 2 points. 18 games in a row for them. They look like a wagon heading into the playoffs with a massive win here over Vegas. 5-4 is the final. The Calgary Flames taking on the Chicago Blackhawks in a kind of expected goalie duel, not so much because it's 2 elite-level goalies, more so because it's 2 teams that aren't exactly known for their goal scoring. And oddly enough, it's Peter Mrazek that outduels Jacob Markstrom, Seth Jones, and Jason Dickinson, scoring for the Hawks in the first period. No goals in the second. Jason Dickinson adds his 2nd of the game, 20th of the year in the third to make it 3-1. Mackenzie Weegar would ruin the shutout bid for Mrazek with about 7.5 to go in the third, but that's the only goal Peter would allow. 38 of 39 for him, a .974, while Markstrom just 24 of 27 for an .889. Again, not an overly high-scoring game. The Flames definitely deserve the win. They outshoot Chicago a combined 34-12 over the final 2 periods, but just not enough to get more than one by Mrazek, and it's a nice little 3-1 victory here for Chicago. The Avalanche hosting the Montreal Canadiens, the Avs looking to extend their winning streak to 10 games, and for Jonathan Drouin, the first time facing off against his former team. Surprisingly here, the Avs winning streak gets snapped by a team well outside the playoffs. They lose 2-1 here to Montreal. All 3 goals coming in the first period. Nathan MacKinnon, 43 seconds in. Nick Suzuki scores 9 seconds later to tie it up at 1. And then Joel Armia scores the eventual game winner with just over 5 minutes to go in the first. Sam Montembeault and Justus Annunen both pretty good tonight. Annunen, 25 of 27 for a .926. He's been very good over the recent stretch here for the Avs. And Sam Montembeault, 27 of 28 for a .964. Very, very strong tonight. The Avs just not able to get enough goal support to get it done. Nate MacKinnon does extend his home point streak, so he has not missed a single home game without getting a point this year, which is bananas. We'll see if he can finish the year out on that streak continuing, but as far as the winning goes, it stops here for the Avs at 9 consecutive games. The Canadians get it done, 2-1 is the final. The Kraken hosting the Anaheim Ducks, the return of Trevor Zegras after his injury, and he accomplishes pretty much nothing. No shots on net, 2 hits, 1 shot attempt 4 face-off wins. That was it for him, continuing his strugglesome season. The Kraken win this one by a final score of 4-0. Ellie Tolvanen and Jordan Eberle scoring in the first. Oliver Bjorkstrand and Matty Beniers scoring in the second. Beniers and Tolvanen both had 2 assists as well. The Ducks only throw 12 shots on net this entire game. 4 in the first, 5 in the second, 3 in the third. Meanwhile, Seattle 13, 14, and 9 for 36 throughout the game. John Gibson had to be pretty solid just to keep this thing respectable as 4-0 can be. It's a dominant performance here from the Kraken. They flattened this Ducks team 4-0. The Coyotes taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Not an overly exciting game under most standards, but Josh Stone making his NHL debut on throwback night at Mullet Arena with his dad and the rest of his family in the crowd. Boone Jenner scores the only goal in the first period, but in the second, the magic begins. Matisse Michelli makes it a 1-1 game, and then a few minutes later, Josh Stone scores his first career NHL goal. Zach Werenski would score before the end of the period to tie it up, but in the third, who but Josh Stone with his second career goal and second of the game to make it a 3-2 lead for the Yotes. And then from there, it's all Coyotes. Nick Bukestad, Nick Schmaltz, and Dylan Gunther all scoring. 2 of those goals shorthanded, Schmaltz and Gunther's that being. And it's a 6-2 win for the Yotes. A pretty dominant one. They outshoot the Blue Jackets 35-26. Karel Vejmelka pretty solid in this one, 24 of 26. Meanwhile, Elvis Merzlikins not his greatest night. He had a really good start to this game, looked really good in the first period and a half, and they just kind of fell apart from there. He gives up, of course, these 6 goals on 35 shots in the losing effort. Great night for the Coyotes as a team, as an organization. This is probably their most exciting win of the entire year to this point, and the future certainly looks bright. It's a 6-2 victory over another team that has some youth and a bright future, but didn't look so great tonight for the Blue Jackets. 6-2 here is the final in favor of the Yotes. Final game of the night, the Stars taking on the San Jose Sharks, and I gotta be totally honest, it is 12:45 my time where I'm at recording this right now, and there's still like 16 minutes left in this game, so I'm gonna go through what's happened so far, but I am not gonna be covering the end of this, so if the Sharks come back and win, my apologies to both Sharks and Stars fans. But first period, Wyatt Johnston and Mason Marchment both scoring at the 12:06 and 16:28 mark to make it 2-0 after 1. Jason Robertson scores less than 20 seconds into the second frame to make it 3-0 before Alex Barabanov and William Eklund both score to make it a 1-goal game once again. Jamie Benn strikes back with his 5th in the last 5 games, making it 4-2. Clem Costin counters back from that to make it 4-3, and then Wyatt Johnston, again his 2nd of the night, strikes back from that to make it a 5-3 game, and that's where we stand right now. Scott Wedgwood in net for the Stars. So far, he's given up the 3 on 17 shots. Mackenzie Blackwood in for San Jose. He's given up the 5 on 30 to this point. We'll see if the Stars can pull this one out. I would expect them to be able to get that done. If they do, they would take over the lead in the Central, I believe, over Colorado with their loss to Montreal tonight. So a pretty big game here, despite the fact that it is against San Jose. So we'll see if the Stars can pull it off. For the Sharks, they, as much as they would like to win, probably prefer to just be lower in the standings, so not too much expectations for the Sharks to come back in this one, but again, as it stands right now, 5-3 Stars. If that score changes or if the winner changes, my deepest condolences. I'm not staying up another hour to make sure that that's correct. So that's going to be it for NHL regular season recap. Night 160, just 2 games tomorrow, so we will talk to you guys then.